Screen Time Stories is presented by Pinwheel. With Pinwheel, you get to set limits on your child's smartphone to match their maturity level. As your child grows, you can open up more features to guide their independence. There are many options that come with a Pinwheel smartphone, like allowing approved contacts only, remotely monitoring messages, selecting expert-vetted apps based on professional guidance, and scheduling modes to keep your kids living in the moment. Connect authentically with a Pinwheel smartphone for kids and teens. For a 10% discount, use code PODCAST10 at checkout.
I am so glad to be joined today by Jenifer Joy Madden, who is a digital wellness expert, health journalist. Her work has appeared in the Washington Post, and she is a veteran of ABC News. She's really done a ton of wonderful research aggregation on what we're looking at in today's digital climate and how it impacts children, but also babies. That's her jam right now. She founded this website, The Durable Human, in 2009 as a way to inspire adults and children to cherish, strengthen, and protect their unique human assets, capabilities, and perspectives in a complex and increasingly digital world. So this is really her life's work, and she has created 2 books, The Durable Human Manifesto, Practical Wisdom for Living and Parenting in the Digital World, and How to Be a Durable Human, Revive and Thrive in the Digital Age Through the Power of Self-Design. Welcome, Jenifer. Thank you so much for joining me. I want to start by just hearing about you. Tell me about yourself, and tell me about Durable Human and how these two things collide.
Yes, I would be glad to do that. Well, about me, my most recent career development is the fact that I'm now a certified digital wellness educator. And that's on top of my being an adjunct professor of digital and broadcast journalism at Syracuse University. And that came from the fact that I've been a pretty much lifelong health communicator. So I wrote the news for health news for ABC News and PBS Health and those type of health shows like on the Discovery Channel. And I have really brought those all together in my focus recently on ourselves relating to the digital world. So that focus began right around 2007 when the iPhone arrived. And I just was watching society and how excited they were for the arrival of the phone. And then how amazing it was to be able to communicate with anybody in the world immediately. That was so exciting. And also to have access to information at your fingertips, way more than an encyclopedia to start out with.
Yeah.
and then practically everything recently. And so that was really amazing. But I was also seeing how my relationship with my children was changing. I have 3 kids. The oldest one is 10 years older than the youngest one. And I noticed that the youngest one was now engaging with the world differently. The other 2 wanted to go outside and play with their friends. That was their big focus. And the youngest one was being drawn to screens. We had a laptop computer, and he loved playing very simple video games on that. And he just didn't have the same interest that the other 2 did. And I kept puzzling over it.
Yeah.
Why? Well, and I saw that it was very powerful, the way he was drawn like a gnat. At the same time, my husband gave me a phone. I kind of didn't want to be reached right off the bat at all moments, but I would go away from conferences and the technology began to exist. And he gave me the phone and I accepted it graciously. And I also had a laptop, and I became more drawn to those things. So a couple years after the iPhone arrived, I set up the website durablehuman.com. And I came to that word durable kind of slowly, but I noticed that the way we engaged with our technology was affecting our durability. Now, the durable to be durable is to last a long time and be effective. I noticed that we were moving around less, getting less exercise. I've written that, the world sat down when we got laptops.
Wow.
And then in 2013, I wrote the Durable Human Manifesto, and I said I had been changing, and that instead of when my teenage son would come around, this guy who was attracted to screens, and we would connect, sometimes I would give him a little shoulder massage, just a little one with my thumbs. And I said, instead, I find myself thumbing through my email and not touching him as much.
Oh, wow.
And so durablehuman.com has been my a platform to observe the changes in our culture and our world, and also to glean thoughts and advice from wise people who also had to make the transition like everybody else. Even the Dalai Lama, I quote him in my second book, but everybody had to make the transition whether they wanted to or not. I remember seeing resistors, and there really aren't any resistors anymore.
Yeah, I think it's, they consider Wi-Fi a utility at this point. You kind of just have to have it to be able to survive these days. But I love that concept of thumbing through your emails instead of giving a little shoulder massage with your thumbs. I think it's really easy to see technology issues as something that our kids have and not always take responsibility for the problem. And something like that, it's modeling behavior by thumbing through your emails, and it's that lack of touch. So normally I speak to parents that have teenagers, but I think that it's really important to take it back to when the relationship begins. And so you noticed that I always like to talk about the relationship as the foundation of literally everything else. So if you're having issues with technology in the home, you have to take the step back into the relationship. So I wanted to ask you about your research on when this relationship begins and how it impacts their future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's a beautiful, broad question.
Yep.
Best to answer it. It starts from birth. Some would even say it starts in utero. I know my daughter started reading to her son. He came to be her son in utero. And they get used to our attitudes and our voices even at that age, but definitely after the baby's born, to be aware of yourself around technology because it has such a big impact. I wanted to talk about babyhood for a second and to talk about the fact that I wish babies got more respect, because being a baby, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, really. It's the babies are born into the world, and guess what? They're wild. They're unplugged. They're not attached to anything. They've never seen a cell phone. They are completely human in and of themselves. And I think we really have to respect that because it's a very short time of life when they are wild. And I call them wild humans. That's my special name for them. And I think it's a unique time in that some parents do know how fast the brain is developing, 0 to 3. And that their babies' brains are extremely sensitive to their environment. And they have particular needs when they're that age. It's really important for them to be able to explore the world and fulfill these needs. And in my research, I'm looking at what's out there in the literature,
right?
Not doing research myself,
right?
But they need to explore the world in 3 dimensions. And they have to use all their senses. And so you've seen babies stick things in their mouths. They're learning so much from mouthing those things about shapes and tastes. And they're also learning about gravity when they pick things up. And so it's very important that they have freedom to be able to do that as much as they can. The other thing they need is what psychologists are calling serve and return relationships in their world. So even as little babies, you can tell, those little experiments you do where you stick your nose out at the infant. I'm sorry, your tongue out the infant and the infant does it back. That's serve and return. So let's use the analogy of a ball. It's like you're tossing the ball to them and they're catching it, or they toss it to you and you catch it. They need that back and forth in order to learn and then to reinforce what they learn. And a lot of times that's just simply through talking to them, reading with them, playing with their toes, all those things that you do, changing their diaper, all those precious times are serve and return interactions. And they need to, when you do that, you are regulating, you're co-regulating with them. In other words, you're being sensitive to their environment and they are learning to trust you, that you're there for them. There's co-regulation. And it's really important that they need to do that. So what happens is if a parent, it's very easy for them to be able to pick up their phone and kind of have a split attention between the phone and the baby. But when they're in the phone, parents are in their own bubble, separate from the baby. And the idea is, as much as you can in your waking hours, to be in the same bubble with the baby. Sometimes you see these pictures of kids on a couch, each one on their own cell phone. They're all in their unique bubbles. Yeah. They're not communicating with each other. It's just one-way communication with the device. Children should be in a shared bubble as much as possible. So I do like to use those analogies of the ball, throw back and forth with the baby, and stay in the bubble as much as you can. Share that bubble.
Yeah, and I love the concept of babies getting more respect. I've never heard somebody say that before, and it makes so much sense. I think about kids and their interaction with the world and how their voices are so tamped down just because of their age, their ability to express themselves. But when you look at babies, it's that much worse. They literally have, no way of vocalizing what their needs and wants are except for, grunting and crying and these super basic things. So respect the babies.
Love it.
I love it too.
100%. So I call myself, cheerleader for humanity, because think about we humans are so, we are smarter than our smartphones, and we have senses that they don't have. Yes, they have proprioception. They'll change. They'll flip their display if you turn the phone sideways. They have a kind of a vision. They can recognize your face if you use that feature of an iPhone, and they also can hear. They're listening. In fact, Apple, funny thing, an ad appears about something you might have said to your husband when you're near the phone. So they can do that, but there's so many senses that they don't have. They don't have intuition. They don't have compassion. They don't have curiosity. They don't have a sense of humor. I could go on and on about how we are awesome and amazing, and we should not play second fiddle to our smartphones, which is one of the reasons I formed Durable Human, because it seemed people were sort of getting an inferiority complex. So therefore, right from the get-go with babies is like, get out of their way. They need to develop all those things, and you have to allow them to discover and explore the world and not limit the world.
Right.
My sense is if you put an iPad in front of them, you are sucking them down into that 2D environment and not allowing them to look around and, getting into the territory of how attachment is being blocked now. You just said that the babies don't have that much control over themselves, their heads, they can't even turn them for a while. Well, people are putting, a screen in front of these kids that can't turn their head, and they literally can't turn away.
Wow.
So this is a thing that parents have to be more respect for the babies. They can't turn away from the hyperstimulation of whatever it is that's on the phone or the tablet.
Yeah.
And so we need to respect the fact that they need to do so many other things than look at a tablet, which is so limiting and can really, really slim down the blooming of their brains.
Okay. And also just the interaction with the parents. If everybody is in their own little bubble, then there's not going to be that, the connections formed that are so important to later in life. I was talking with Catherine Nibbs recently about attachment styles, and she's saying that an insecure attachment style is night and day difference between how older kiddos interact with technology. And so taking it all the way back to babyhood, because this is when kids start to form their different styles. Do you have any thoughts on how a baby with an iPad or a mom that's distracted by her phone, do you have any opinions or research on how that affects the child's attachment style later in life?
Sure, I have a lot of research on that. And the thing about attachment is that you didn't hear about it much till recently because nobody had to think about it. No one had to think about attachment till now. We didn't have sources of distraction that we could carry around in our hands and hand over to the kid or have in our hands. And now we have to think about how we're interacting with our devices around the kids. It used to be that feeding a baby was just a sacred time, very special time. But now in our fast-paced world, we're always looking for downtime to catch up and to check our phones. So people are using the time of feeding a baby to check their email and things like that. Those are vital times to attach, to have that closeness with the baby, and they can feel they can feel the distraction.
Wow.
So now, for the first time in human history, there's competition to block attachment. And so that's why it's really important that we not allow that to happen. And what's happening is the serve and return is being disrupted. So right then, during feeding, it's being disrupted. If you're on your phone and they're doing their little discovery and they look up at you and they go, and they're, finding something, or they're showing, they can have their fingers on a little ball or ring or something to show that they know how to twist and how cool that is. You're on your phone, you're like, You're not looking at them. You're not responding to them. You've missed it. You've missed their bid for attention. This can happen over and over again. And once it gets to toddlerhood and you if you can get out to the playground and you decide to use that time for your phone, a child can actually get hurt by, falling off the slide and or falling off just a curb. They start crying. You might overreact.
Yeah.
Because you didn't really see the accident. They're crying. You look around, did another kid do it? What happened? So it leads to a lot of misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And if it happens a lot, the child develops an insecure attachment with you.
Interesting.
It's different when you use your phone, when there's another adult in the room. They have this capacity to know that you're busy and they can wait for a second. Babies have no idea why you're not looking at them and talking to them and giving them reinforcement for their bids for attention. That's what sets up the lack of attachment between child and parent. In my course, I have an interview with Hillary Cash. She is the founder of the first internet addiction treatment program in the United States. It's near Seattle. It's called Restart. And I asked her when I went up there to visit, which was a tremendous opportunity to see the young men being rehabilitated from various types of addiction, gaming or porn or whatever they're in there for. And I said, well, is there a silver bullet for parents to keep their kids out of here?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, yeah, secure attachment.
Okay, so give me a refresher on insecure attachment. The thing that we avoid when, when our babies are nursing or playing on the playground. What are some examples of a parent that is creating an insecure attachment in their child?
Well, I think maybe I wouldn't pin it right on the parent right there. I might say the environment. Environment.
Yeah.
The child is not getting the rich environment that they need in terms of this exploration and also the serve and return interactions with adults and parents and other adults, whoever the child is lucky enough to be around, to have more enrichment, more talking and interaction.
Yeah.
Well, we have if a child has an insecure attachment, they become emotionally fragile and not durable. They're just not going to be as self-confident. They're going to be more afraid of things because they have a kind of a lack of trust. They reach out to whoever they're supposed to trust the most, and that person really isn't there for them in the moment.
Mm.
Of course, we're all going to miss moments of when the child looks up and says, "That," is pointing to a dog. And that's when you're supposed to, you say, "Yes, that's a doggy. That's wonderful." That's your return on their bid. So just being available for those moments and having your surrogates be available too. So when you have that teen babysitter, ask them to please, put their phone aside, and so they're paying attention.
Yeah.
But there's learning to speak. What we haven't talked about yet is the fact that babies learn to speak by studying your face and your lips. And the number of words they hear a day, that's one of the research points, is that the more words a child hears a day, the more they are language proficient. And that translates to academic performance later. And so the more you block your face or their face with a screen, the less they're actually going to be able to latch on to language.
Yeah.
And it's a serious thing. Again, with your adult, it doesn't matter if they can't see your face. It's crucially important that your child sees your face or the face of their other caregivers. It's really important. There's been research in preschools about the kids that don't get enough words a day in their preschool, their language proficiency is less. And if they're tracked and those preschool teachers focus on those kids and actually speak more words specifically to them and to the whole class, that raises the whole level of literacy in the class.
Wow.
It's really, really cool.
Yeah, so they need that direct communication for language proficiency at whatever stage they should be at.
Right. Well, and of course it starts directly from day one with babies.
Yeah.
They need to hear the words. They need to see your face. And that's why the business of looking at them when you're feeding them is important. Maybe murmuring to them at that time. But just like changing diapers, you're right in their face. It was kind of distressing to see some weird device where you could strap your cell phone to your forehead as you're changing the baby's diaper. What I say in my other book, How to Be a Durable Human, there are going to be designs that come on the market.
Mm-hmm.
They may be marketed as like the latest thing. It doesn't mean that you should buy them. We should use our brains to sort of analyze these marketing techniques and figure out if they're really good for the baby. And obviously that one isn't, because it takes their attention and puts it up on the phone over your face.
Mm-hmm.
And the research is showing that there's something called the transfer deficit, that kids don't learn well through screens. So if people think that they're learning well through the screen, they're not. And so even if they can spout off some ABCs and some numerals, the research is showing that a kid can say number three, and maybe know what it was from the screen. But if there are 5 blocks sitting on a table and you say, "Can you pick up 3 blocks? What is 3?
Oh, wow.
No idea." So
There's
that's
a
an
disconnect.
example of the transfer deficit.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I haven't heard of that before.
This is new research.
I love it. I am all about the new research. I think that it's really important to have this research on kids and technology, because it's so relevant to today, but also so under-researched. But at the same time, I love adding compassion whenever possible to it, because we're talking about parenting. And so, you can look at all this quantitative data and say, oh, okay, this is what we do moving forward, and totally miss the point, because this is, it's relationships. It's so much more than just numbers on a graph. And so I appreciate your approach to all of this, how you're saying, like, this is the data, but also we have to be real about how we're meeting our kids.
Absolutely. And just to make it even more serious, there are new fMRI studies coming out and EEG studies showing there's actual brain changes in infants that are exposed to a lot of screens, that they have changes in the white matter and the gray matter of their brains. And in mouse studies, certainly they show that happens as well. And so I don't think we should just hear that and ignore it. We're talking about your child's overall development in life. Tech can wait.
Yeah.
It's okay, soon, just not yet.
Yeah. And when you were giving examples about what a person might be doing on their phone or tablet when they, really could be taking that time to interact with their kids, it was very gracious and, oh, I have a free moment. I'm going to check my email and do these productive things. But in reality, I am prone to pull up something that is completely unproductive and, not good for anybody in the room and not important. And I think that, it's just important to be able to realize that sometimes we hop onto our phones just because we're bored or just because it's calling to us. And it's not always necessarily, oh, I have to do XYZ. It's really like, I'm going to scroll this website.
I hear ya. And it's nice if we could kind of get into the rhythm of the baby. They're living in an analog world.
The rhythm of the baby.
Moment after moment, their whole world is expanded, and your life can actually kind of slow down. The rhythm can slow down, so it's almost like really enjoy that time, and to put the phone in a drawer, get it out of sight, so you're not thinking about it. So it's not part of your cognitive load. You're not being drawn to it. You're being drawn to what's important, which is right in front of you.
Yeah, and you can do certain things. I think it's easy to rely on your phone, which is valid. If you have an older kid that's in school, you need to be able to be reached if something happens. You can, go through the settings on your phone and make it so that the do not disturb, the caveat there is that the school is able to get through. The phone will ring if the school calls, but everybody else, the phone will be silent. No notifications. The phone stays in the drawer and it doesn't come out unless you hear a ringing and you think, oh, okay, this is probably something urgent.
As a digital wellness instructor, I really love the fact, I love to talk about and do it myself, is to get my phone out of sight, because it literally drains your attention. So if you're doing something important on the computer, put your phone away out of sight, because it's drawing your attention away even from what you're doing on the laptop. You've got to get that email done. Put your phone in the back so you can't see it. Those are real studies that show just even the suggestion of the phone being around. And so that's really a cool thing to also to remember for yourself.
It is very cool. No, and I love the idea of just kind of embracing that moment in your life. So when you have a baby, you're not only supporting their growth by being present, but you said the rhythm, what did you say? The rhythm of the baby. Rhythm. And I think that's so lovely to think about, because it's stressful. There's a lot of hormones going around. There's a lot of change. And to be able to just get into the rhythm of the baby. I feel like the baby is, on this totally different level. And if we can just sort of accept where they're at and try to get onto their level, it would probably be beneficial in a lot more ways than just giving them a better attachment style.
Mm-hmm. No, it is. And, wellness techniques are, deep breathing and quiet and listening and just smelling and just sort of like just taking in the whole environment. So it's a beautiful, beautiful time not to waste, especially, looking at the stuff we don't need to look at that actually can bring us down.
Yeah.
Why do we want to do that? This book, I don't know if you've ever read it, The Celestine prophecy?
No.
It has this section where, like there's like a pink cloud around people, and that you can, when they're negative vibes, it sort of turns the pink cloud gray.
Cool.
So you imagine this beautiful pink, beautiful cloud of happiness around your baby, and how you don't want to bring that negativity into that space.
Okay.
Because our phones hold so much, stuff from the outside world that we want to keep away from them for a little bit longer if we can.
Yeah, and also just not bringing that into the scenario that you're in at the moment. I really love the visual right there, because babies are so easy to love, and they're so beautiful. They're just naturally so wonderful, and you really can just kind of picture this cloud of pink, almost like a cartoon. They're just perfect. And then you get on your phone, and there is so much madness in the world that you're immediately exposed to. And just thinking about the baby looking up at your face, if you're reading about something that's really disturbing going on in the world, the expression that I must be making, that my baby is picking up on at that point, is just I totally get that gray and pink energy or aura. It's a very cool visual.
Yes, that's the energy or aura. So it's just, you have to, it's just such a unique, magical time. And, to try to just slow down and enjoy it is so great.
Well, and so it is really hard being a new mom. Like, I know I mentioned that we have to be realistic about what we're logging on to do. It's not always productive. It's sometimes just, nothing good there. But sometimes, like I think especially these days with the way that people are struggling, tax rates are high, income doesn't seem to be meeting expenses for a lot of people. I think that it's reasonable for a mom to be so swamped with just trying to pay the bills that she does take those moments and try to be, that super mom where she's like, okay, I can do everything. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. And I know it was really hard for parents during the pandemic to manage everything. And I remember that feeling so strongly of wanting to connect with the outside world. You're trying to stay in the house and trying to, not get out there. And then, so you really, really want to know what's going on. I remember that strong feeling of wanting to see the news and seeing all these updates about COVID, and also connect with people that you're not seeing, like your parents. So you might step it up a little more to communicate with them. All that takes away from your time in front of the people in front of your face. And so I think it was very prevalent during the pandemic for parents to kind of be overwhelmed. I'm going to put it that way, that they didn't do the little techniques that they may have done. So research is now showing that babies heard fewer words during the pandemic. A lot of them, not all of them, but some. Consequently, there is speech delay going on in preschools and up to kindergarten now, widespread speech delay. Mm-hmm. And also, interestingly, some research out of Ireland that kids, a number of them, more than usual, aren't waving. They're not waving, they're not pointing, they're not doing those little baby things that naturally happen at a certain time until later. And so there are downstream effects to what happened during COVID. And on my website, I do engage with parents that have inadvertently allowed their child to engage with screens more than they wanted to. Mm-hmm. And then they're telling their stories. And so you're talking about Supermom. I do have a story of Robin and what happened to her that I can share with you if we have time.
Yeah, go for it. I love stories.
Okay. That's great. I appreciate that. So Robin actually used the words Supermom. Mm-hmm. She thought, with a new baby, she had a 14-month-old son. And he was a little earlier than 14 months. So this probably started at like 8 or 9 or 10 months. She wanted to have a neat house. It was during COVID, so she was overwhelmed with everything. And then she found a way to get some quiet. And so what she did was she would put her son in front of Made for Baby TV. It's often called like Made for Preschoolers, but these are shows such as Coco Melon, and they're highly stimulating. And of course, they sucked in his attention immediately. They're made that way. And she said she only would do that for about an hour a day. Sometimes she said it was a little bit more than an hour a day. So after a few months, she noticed real changes in her son's behavior. He stopped speaking the words he would speak. He stopped looking at her in the eye, she and her husband. He sort of entered his own little world. He'd have tantrums when she'd take away the tablet. And he started doing weird behaviors. I mean, unusual behaviors, like spinning and other strange things that she'd never seen before. And she got very worried about him, what's going on with him. And so she actually stumbled upon information on my website, and it said that it's been seen around the world that if you see this kind of behavior coming on, and your child's been exposed from an early age, that take them away from screens. Not only do that, increase your talking to them.
Yeah.
Read more, play more, specifically connect your reading a book with your eyes. So they're reading the book, they're seeing your eyes, and they're watching your mouth.
Yeah.
So it's like making up for the lost time of this serve and return interaction. So Robin tells a story about the fact that she never knew that screens could be that powerful, screen time, and that when she took her screen away, she worked with him for months to try to get him to interact again. Yeah. He finally started responding to his name. Then the words came back. Then the love came back.
Oh my goodness.
He got detached from her. He
didn't
care.
Yeah, no, I give Robin credit for a couple reasons. One, because she put her story on blast, which, mom guilt is a very good reason to not tell people about your mistakes. But also I give her credit because she recognized that something was changing in her kiddo. And I think that's such a big part of parenting is we're all making mistakes. We're all going to do the wrong thing, especially when you think Coco Melon, it's for kids, like it's educational. It looks like it's safe. It looks like it's healthy. And she was able to recognize that in her unique situation, things weren't going well. And she decided that she was going to, put the brakes on and do a 180, which I think is really commendable.
Yeah, she's amazing. And you mentioned apps and shows, and I've seen 80%. There's another study that I haven't put my hands on yet that's up to 94% of content that babies and toddlers engage with has persuasive design techniques. So these are techniques for the kids to stay engaged, to the point where there's a little shaming that goes on. Wait a minute, you haven't played for a minute. Can you pay attention to me? I mean, honestly, there's some pretty egregious techniques that are used that we don't even notice because we're like, oh, it's just X and such. It looks so simple.
So
no, it's not as simple as you think.
I am curious about this because the only thing that comes to my mind is on YouTube Kids, they'll say like recommended videos for you to watch after you watch the first one. And I think that's an example of pulling kids in for more and more. They watch a 10-minute clip and then they're asked to watch another 10-minute clip that's very similar to the one they just watched. What are some other things? Like the kid, can you think of anything off the top of your head? The kid on the screen, the cartoon will say like look at me or something.
Yeah, those are really important. Or ask your mom, if there's some sort of little pack, I call it a pack, a thing like in the game where they want you to spend some money. That's for a little bit of the older kids. One thing that really keeps them engaged when they're babies is a very fast shot changes. Very, very fast shot changes. They literally can't look away. They're
Wow.
like, up, they're up. They just, it's like a tick, they try to look away and they can't because there's another amazing visual in front of them. They cannot process it. That's happening way too fast for them to process. So even though they're quietly sitting there, this is what happened to Robin, seemed like they were entertained in a safe way. They weren't. And it's not quality time for them. They're not, these kids that find out they've become addicted to this type of media. They may be able to spout off the ABCs. If you watch them after a while, that's all they're doing. It's become imprinted in their brain and they're not learning anything else.
It's really interesting. I feel like that's the difference between hearing this is okay to do and actually connecting with your kid and recognizing that something's off and they're not, associating the number 3 with 3 physical blocks. I think that's really, just kind of heartbreaking because we are put into this position of believing that we're doing the right thing. And it feels like...
because you don't have any info. You don't know.
Yeah.
This is new research, and you have the pressure of the shows and the pressure of the content and the pressure of the persuasive design. Autoplay is that thing on YouTube that if you leave your child sitting there long enough, it's going to just keep playing over and over. Now, there's another thing that's a little bit strange on YouTube. Sometimes it pulls in inappropriate content.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden something weird happens in the video. Like, I'm not going to get into too many examples, but there could be like a bad host who starts talking about, working with Play-Doh, but starts talking about inappropriate sexual relationships.
Yes. And I brought up YouTube Kids because that was the only example I could think of, but I will state, yes, I don't think that YouTube Kids is a safe spot for kids. I totally agree. And I've seen some of these things that appear and they look like cartoons and they are not G-rated.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The filtering system isn't great on YouTube Kids. But I mean, if you're able to sit there with them, that's one thing. But I mean, regardless, for these very small children, we're talking 0 to 3, what kinds of things would you recommend are appropriate and inappropriate for that age?
Well, I will tell you that the World Health Organization recommends, they call it no screens under age 2. Now, what's happened is that there's been an exception that the American Academy of Pediatrics also recognizes, which is FaceTime video calls. Mm-hmm. What you can probably intuitively know is that the other person on the other side of the TV is responding directly to the child. So the child, giggles or does something like that, the person on the other end. So it's this bid back and forth. It's a serve and return. Can exist. And, the ball's going back and forth. And it's a beautiful thing. And so that they have allowed that exception, which is kind of good, secret-wise, because weapon-wise, because if you're cooking dinner and you do have the child in a safe place where they could perhaps interact with the grandma or grandpa for 15 minutes or 10 minutes, maybe you can get a little something done.
Yeah.
So you can use that to your advantage instead of like parking the kid in front of the tablet directly where anything can come up and the child can't look away.
Yeah.
If you're monitoring this conversation with the person on the other end of the screen, if the kid starts really getting uncomfortable, which they will do after 5 or 10 minutes, because they don't want to be in one space, you're there and you notice immediately. So again, you're interacting with the child. And so I think it's kind of sweet that technology allows us to have that one opportunity with technology. And then, if you want to watch a 10-minute video with your child, sit down and watch. And if there's a tiger on it, you can say, make tiger noises.
Yeah.
You can do all sorts of things after the video's off and during the video to interact with the child as you're watching. But
I think this is like something just clicked for me. My 9 and 14-year-old kids have trouble doing extended FaceTime calls with our relatives, and they are totally fine with watching TV for ages on end. And so it just, like, for me, it really illuminates how attention grabbing these preschool shows are. And I don't have toddlers anymore, but it would be really interesting to see how long a toddler could actually engage in a FaceTime call before they drop the tablet and go wander off to play in their, play kitchen or something like that.
During the pandemic, people really, really utilized tablets to their need and advantage at that time. There are kids that are now suffering very greatly from language delay, developmental delay, brain changes, because the kids sat in the crib or somewhere for 6, 8, 10 hours a day because of this persuasive design techniques, and also because they can't look away. The kids couldn't look away. And so all of a sudden, a few months into that, the kids start doing this strange stuff. They stop responding. They don't talk anymore. They regress.
Yeah.
And or they don't progress.
Yeah.
And so it's a real thing that's happening now, sometimes called screen-induced syndrome.
I understand you have 5 steps to keeping our babies on the right paths. Can you share those with us?
So the first one is, this is so simple, being with you. So you have that serve and return. So that would be talking, reading, dancing, hugs, laughs, all those things, throwing balls. Yep, literal balls. And when you're with them, to put the phone aside, put it on top of the fridge, put it somewhere. Yes, have that breakthrough ring in case your high schooler calls, but otherwise leave it, have that self-control to put it up there and really focus on your child, and turn the TV off in the background. I know there are some people that like to have the TV on all the time. It's distracting for the child, and it sets up inattention from day one. So turn off the TV in the background and just interact and have fun with your child. I picked up from speech language pathologist Alyssa Liberti the idea of the yes space. If you do have little ones and you might have to do a call or something like that, you can set up a boundary, either a playpen or some safe baby fences, and then put them in there, the babies, with really, soft toys, like soft blocks and stuffed animals and things where they can, spin toys where they can spin stuff, and also just cheap little things that are no cost, basically, like plastic containers and lids. So that could be their yes space when you can't be directly with them. So don't forget about the yes space. And that brings up the playthings they can hold and manipulate. That's what they should have. The electronic toys they're not helpful because they don't do the work the babies are supposed to do. They think for the baby, they light up, they're inappropriate, they sort of talk to them before the kids don't understand, and they're ill-timed, and they're just a bad substitute for your own serve and return. Whereas a baby can sit there with blocks, stacking blocks, or just something they can chew, or a face they can stare at.
Yeah.
That's the type of, and manipulating especially is really important. And then let them help with routines. So that would be resist parking them in front of the TV or a device while you're cooking dinner. Just try hard not to. When they can stand up, you can put a stool next to the sink. Mm-hmm. They're not high enough to really do much damage, but they can watch you, and then you can let them, pour over the cup or stir or something. Yeah. Rather than get in the habit of avoiding routines, involve them with routines. And then allow them to play alone with as much as they can, and with other kids, so they can learn socialization. And when they're playing alone, they're using their imagination. So this is the idea of getting at the individual child. Let them choose what they want to play with, and then that actually goes toward what's inside. What you're trying to do is develop what their special talents are. And so if they have time to play alone, and they have time to gravitate to what they want to do, then they're discovering themselves. They're discovering their own talents. and then go outdoors. It's a beautiful thing to do, to be able to be in the stimulation of nature. If you notice, all the natural colors are, out there. They're light blue, light brown. There's no bright red, bright, orange, except in flowers. And that's wonderful to have those touches of color in the environment. But kids can feel the breeze. It's a 5+ sensory way for them to exist. So, those are some things to do just on a daily basis, if at all possible.
Yeah, and so you're saying these things for the babies, but I feel like it could actually apply to any age. We all need to go outside and involve our, kids at whatever age they are in our routines. And I feel like that's a lot of wonderful advice, but, being able to take it down to the basic level so that the baby can get involved, the toddler can pour the water. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, but it takes self-awareness. It takes environmental awareness on the parents' part about what's important now. What's important now? What's important is to feed that baby's environment, their brains, and to get them to have as many brain connections as they can have, rather than limit their brain connections, which is what happens in a 2D environment. It's kind of like there's no certain return when they're sitting there, maybe they have to touch something to get something on the screen to move, but that's very limited in terms of sensory integration.
Yeah, I agree. What's important now? I like that. It's easy to think what's important now and go to, I'm overwhelmed. I need a moment. What's important now can be, how can I exist in this moment with my toddler with the future in mind?
Exactly. And that might be if you accidentally picked up your phone and you saw the latest headline and you're kind of outraged or upset or scared.
Yeah.
Maybe your baby can bring you back into the analog space and be like, oh my gosh, what's important now? I need to love this baby here. That's what I'm going to put my brain on right now. And, just to remind ourselves of that.
Respect the babies.
Absolutely.
Jenifer, thank you so much for sharing this wealth of information with us today. I truly appreciate the work that you do and you taking the time out of your day to share it with all of us. If anybody's interested in learning more about those 5 steps that Jenifer just listed out, check out durablehuman.com for a handout that she has on the website. And if you don't have a baby and you're thinking this whole episode is totally irrelevant to my lifestyle, I might have something for you. Next week, I have a really wonderful teenager joining me as a guest. This kid, he's 16 years old. He just really blew my mind with his ability to be open and honest with me and talk about some of the struggles that he's personally faced with technology and where he's at now. And I hope that you all can listen to that episode and come away just as, with all of the maternal feelings or paternal feelings that I have for this awesome human. Anyways, that's it for today. Hit subscribe if you haven't yet, just so that you can stay on top of all the episodes that come out. And just remember, when it comes to parenting, all you have to be is good enough.